Chair recognizes the young lady from Florida, Ms. Demings, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the ranking member and to all of our witnesses here today who are engaging in this very important discussion. This past weekend, the day after we recognized International Holocaust Remembrance Day, neo-Nazis held rallies in Central Florida. I represent Florida. They shouted anti-Semitic slurs, waved Nazi flags, and chanted, "The Jew is the devil." I have to say, as a career law enforcement officer, I am disappointed that Homeland Security has become such a political, partisan issue, because I think that we can all do better. Now, make no mistake, as a former law enforcement officer, I am not unfamiliar with hate organizations. I have been in their presence on numerous occasions. But let me be clear, of all of the protections that our Constitution guarantees us in this great nation, violence is not one of those protections. The group that broke the peace this weekend is not merely a half dozen malcontents, as some have categorized them. Group leader was indicted in Arizona just days before for pointing a gun at a group of Black men outside a hotel. Mr. Greenblatt, you have already talked about how important it is to really speak up and speak out against this type of behavior. So I'd really like to direct my question to the other witnesses. If you could also tell us how important it is for community leaders, faith-based elected officials to identify and condemn, have zero tolerance for these type of threats, whether it's anti-Semitic, racist, white nationalists, or otherwise. And Ms. Idris, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Ms. Demings. I think it's essential, as we've heard those words from Jonathan Greenblatt so clearly. One of the things we saw in Texas was the incredible solidarity from the interfaith community, with a Catholic priest and an imam and a minister, evangelical minister, sitting across the street in command center throughout the hostage crisis, and really condemning that actively. And we've seen some media coverage of that. It's so important to see those interfaith expressions condemning Islamophobia, condemning anti-Semitism, to have anyone from across the political spectrum condemn hate and violence when we see it, to raise the voices against what's happening in HBCUs, and to really be clear, what are the values that we all stand for as a community across political lines, across our differences, because we have to start setting some of those norms and values in order for us to begin to heal and move forward.
Thank you so much. I'm going to move on for sake of time. Mr. Greenblatt, the nation was horrified last month, as we have already talked about, with an armed gunman held congregants hostage at a Texas synagogue. As someone who has been a lifelong supporter of nonprofit security grants, I was heartened that the rabbi was able to put the security practices he learned through training funded by those grants into action to resolve this situation, or at least without loss of life. How should Congress be looking at the program given the dynamic threat landscape?
So Congresswoman Demings, first and foremost, thank you for the question. Thank you for your leadership in law enforcement for so many years. ADL partners with law enforcement in Orlando, in Florida, around the country. We couldn't do our work to fight hate without that cooperation. So I'm grateful for that. To your question, and I would also say we watched this rally by these Nazis in your area over the weekend. It was disgusting. And to anyone who is confused about the threat of right-wing extremism, listen to what the Congresswoman said. Literally, please just listen. Google what happened. It is shocking and stunning that anyone would simply dismiss these people as jackasses. They're not jackasses. They are sinister, violent extremists with a lethal agenda. I'm sorry, I just had to get that out because I don't think it's political to call out prejudice, and I don't think it's nuanced to say we should get rid of the Nazis. That being said, as it relates specifically to what should Congress do, double the funding for the nonprofit security grant program, the DHS dollars that help provide security and training for religious institutions. By the way, not just synagogues, but mosques, black churches, Hindu temples, Sikh gurdwaras, etc. Last year, there were $400 million in applications alone, and yet we only have a $180 million program. I think the government should fund at least 90% of that. So if you could bring it from 180 to $360 million, as we like to say, Dayenu.
To all of our witnesses, thank you so much. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.